welcome back to Monson Made This. My name is Michael. I cook vegan food, so if you want more vegan recipes and content, you should click that subscribe button below. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there, all that good stuff. Oh yeah, don't forget the bell notification. I don't think a lot of people have that turned on, and it doesn't let you know that a new video comes out if you don't have that pressed, so make sure to select that bell notification as well. Even if you've been a subscriber for years, just double check that that's clicked so you get notified when new videos come out. Today's video, my oven's preheated. Today's video isn't gonna use that oven very much, just for one dish, but I'm really excited for what I have for you today. I've been really kind of playing around with ideas of recipes and types of content that I want to create, and I'm really focusing on trying to use pantry staples and fresh produce to make really interesting dishes. And today's just kind of a bunch of things thrown at you. It's inspired by a recent kind of dinner party that Ben and I had. Our friend Steph came over, and instead of just going to the store and coming up with a bunch of stuff to make, I decided to use what I had on hand to make some dishes. It all felt very Mediterranean and Italian, and it wasn't until like the next morning when Ben and I were standing at the counter eating all the leftovers with bread, which I'll show you here in just a moment, that we realized, hey, this is actually a really great idea for a recipe video. So I have a roasted tomato dish. I have a roasted cauliflower and chickpea salad. I have grilled zucchini, this awesome charred kale salad, a really delicious caper and garlic oil that's gonna go on a bunch of stuff, and then also a pesto that I'm calling Whatever You've Got pesto, which is a basic kind of pesto paradigm for you to use whatever greens you have to make a delicious pesto. And I have here a bunch of pantry staples, as I mentioned. This is all about using pantry staples. One of the things that's going to be kind of strange that I'm using today is miso. Also capers, which hopefully that's showing there, is a little bit maybe, I guess not too strange to Mediterranean food. Some nutritional yeast. These three ingredients here I'm going to be using quite a bit because a lot of Italian and Mediterranean cooking uses anchovies and Parmesan cheese, and so these are gonna give us that depth, that funk, that saltiness that you get from an anchovy or a parm that would be in a lot of these dishes, but we're doing it in a plant-based way. So let me clear this stuff out of the way. We're gonna start with the roasted tomatoes first so I can get those in the oven, and then I'll show you the other dishes as we get to them. So let me grab the tomatoes and I'll be right back. Here I have a number of grape or cherry tomatoes. They're just sliced in half lengthwise. And then I have a few cloves of garlic that have just been smashed. The oven is preheated to 400. The last thing I need to do after slicing these is just drizzle a little bit of olive oil. You're gonna use maybe a little bit more than you think you might need because it's gonna the tomatoes are gonna break down, they're gonna reduce, but the olive oil mixed with the tomato juice that's gonna be residual in the pan is kind of what we're going for. We really want something to dip bread in. As I mentioned earlier, this is also a little bit of salt. Be quite liberal with the salt as well. The whole thing that I'm trying to go for here is just a bunch of dishes that you can eat at room temperature. And I would say the thing that makes these a meal is the fact that you can eat bread with them. So these are gonna go into the oven. They're gonna get nice and saucy and jammy and gooey and even a little bit charred. I'm gonna say give them about 25-30 minutes. And then we'll take these out. This can go on the table just like this. Actually, we'll sprinkle a little bit of fresh basil on as well. And this is ready to go. This is a delicious dish to either eat with a spoon or eat with a bunch of bread as we're going to do. I feel like I'm trying to get a bunch in here in a short amount of time because I've just got so many ideas and I'm so excited and I keep mentioning the bread. So let me show you that bread before we get too far ahead. So this is a really nice loaf of sourdough. Actually, my friend John, shout out to John, got it for me at his work. It's just a really nice loaf of sourdough. I slice it up. Because I grilled the zucchini, which I'll show you in just a bit, I decided to throw the bread on there as well. So it's just got some nice char. If it was really fresh bread, you could probably just use it like fresh out of the oven. But this was a couple of days old, and one way to give like old bread new life again is to grill it. Take some garlic once it's fresh off the grill. Just kind of rub a clove of garlic on there. Just sense it. It's really great. So this is just gonna be on the table, and you wanna make sure to have a ton of bread, especially for all these dishes, because you're gonna want things to go onto the bread. You're gonna want the bread to sop things up, because we're just making a lot of really delicious sauces, and things are gonna get really juicy, so you really want a bread like this to sop that up. So that's the bread story. Get yourself some good bread. And I'm truly under the impression that as long as you have bread with something, you officially have a meal. So we officially have a meal here. All right, so let's start making the pesto. This is kale. I've just stemmed it, haven't even really chopped it or anything. But as I'm calling this, it's a whatever you got pesto. I have kale. If you had arugula, whatever greens you have, you could use those in this sort of generic recipe. The other ingredients that are gonna go in this, some garlic, nutritional yeast, and miso, as I mentioned earlier. And then our nut of choice, I'm actually using walnuts. If you have pine nuts or any other type of nut you'd rather use, go ahead and use those, but I really like the walnuts. So there's an order of operations here, but again, like whatever greens you have, you've got it. This isn't a really thin pesto. It's kind of somewhere between like a chimichurri and a pesto. So it could be spooned on top of things. It can be a dip, but it's not necessarily, I guess you could toss it with pasta, but it's somewhere in between. It's a little bit heartier than just a paste, which I think is what the word pesto actually means. So the first thing we want to add to our food processor is garlic. And that's just so that we can get the garlic crushed up a little bit so we don't risk having huge chunks of garlic in our pesto. We can now pretty much add everything else, the miso and nutritional yeast. Again, we're trying to substitute for that Parmesan flavor, and the combination of those two things really does a great job. Plus miso is very salty, so we don't really have to add any or very much salt at the end. We have our walnuts. Those are not toasted. A toasted nut will taste more of the nut, so I like to use them raw in a pesto like this just so it doesn't have this really pungent over-the-top flavor. Next thing is the kale or our greens. You want about 2 packed cups worth, and for me that basically is just filling the remainder of the food processor. It will have olive oil added at the end. You could, I guess, technically make this oil-free if you wanted. I just really like the way that oil carries flavor, so get a good quality olive oil if you're going to be adding that. So lid goes on, and I'm just gonna pulse, keeping an eye on it. I don't want it to get too pulverized, like I said. I want it to kind of all have this nice uniform texture where you can still see a little bit of the kale. Mush it down a little bit. Smells incredible already. It's like, I don't know, that nutritional yeast miso combination, it's just like my new favorite thing. I'm adding miso to so many like Italian dishes now, and I feel like it's just making them come to life. Wait till you see this oil that I'm gonna make, this caper garlic oil, like ridiculous. So when it looks like it's fairly broken down, fairly uniform, this is the time when I want to add my olive oil, and I'm just gonna add a couple of tablespoons. You could also add like a little bit of vinegar, some lemon juice. This is just a little bit of liquid is nice to help bring things together. And then after I've processed this for a second, it all comes together, I'll taste it for salt and seasoning. Actually, let's get a little bit more oil in there. So you can see it's nice paste, not too, I guess, I mean, I said you don't want it a paste, but it is pasty, although you can discern little bits of the nuts and the kale. So I just want to give this a taste. It's perfect. It's got this freshness. I think like a little bit of lemon juice might brighten it up. Serve some lemons on the table. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna leave it as it is right now though, transfer it to a bowl, and it's gonna go on the table with the rest of the ingredients. The tomatoes are smelling incredible as well. I can already hear them sizzling and smell them in the room, so I'll be checking on those in just a minute as well. But the next thing we're gonna do is go back to the stove and make that delicious caper garlic oil. Here in this little pan, I have everything I need for this garlic caper oil, capers that have been drained, garlic that's been sliced thinly, and some miso. Again, this is sort of our funk. This is our anchovies substitute. It's our parm substitute. And to this, I'm going to add quite a bit of olive oil, probably with this about a half cup. And that's because I'm making quite a bit of this oil. Now, you do not want this to get to a full, you don't want to deep fry the ingredients. So I'm going to put it on sort of like medium to medium low. I'm just going to work the miso out. I'm going to stir things around. I'm going to keep an eye on it. And I do want it to soften the garlic. I don't really want them to get any color. I just want to infuse the olive oil with the garlic, the miso, the capers, and it's going to be this just really incredible, funky, salty, slightly, I don't know what the word is with capers, I guess slightly briny. And this is going to be drizzled on our charred kale, which I'm about to start, as well as our cauliflower and chickpea salad. So let's move over to this pan and start on the kale. This pan here is just a cast iron pan. It is heating up to about medium high right now.
You use it in every video.
I love this pan. Actually, I have 2 of these. They're thrifted cast iron. I haven't added any oil or anything to the pan. And I'm just going to, because I haven't cut up my kale or anything, I'm just going to rip it in here. Now, surprisingly, this kale doesn't really wilt that much. But with the pan being, hey guys, they love kale. Did they deserve a little piece? Do you guys deserve a little piece of kale? There you go, Hopper. So the kale's not going to necessarily wilt down too much. It is going to get, as I've called it, charred. It's going to get a little bit of color. It's going to get kind of like a smoky-ish flavor. And then as soon as we pull it off, we're going to drizzle a little bit of vinegar on it, and then we're going to add our caper garlic oil. So this is going to just hang out. As it chars, I'll stir it with the tongs. I'll keep an eye on my oil, making sure that it doesn't get too hot. But I want this to go for maybe about 10 or so minutes. The miso isn't going to disappear, by the way. The miso will still kind of form some little bits, but it's okay because once that gets drizzled over everything else, it just kind of melts into the dish and just, you'll never know like, oh my God, it's miso. You'll just be able to tell that there's something incredible going on in the background of the dish. This smells so good already. I don't know if you can see this here. It's starting to steam. That's some of the liquid getting released, and that's going to happen before it gets a little bit of color. We don't want the garlic browned. We do want the kale browned. So the kale has wilted down quite a bit. It does have some nice charred bits. I don't want it to get too burnt, and I don't want it to just reduce to nothing. I want it to still have a little bit of bite. And then just transferring it to this bowl here. And then I'm going to drizzle it with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. And it's important to do this right when it comes off so that it can kind of absorb a little bit of that flavor. I'm just going to toss this really quickly with my tongs. Also, the oil that I was making here, this is done with the heat, and I'm just letting it sit, hang out, relax while I finish everything else. So this kale is going to get transferred to another dish, and then before I serve it, I will drizzle it with some of this caper garlic oil. The 3 dishes that are going to be receiving this garlic caper oil are here in front of me. The first one here is just grilled zucchini. This was on the grill. As soon as it came off the grill, I drizzled it with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And then now I'm just going to drizzle it with some of this oil. Again, you could make this oil free if you wanted. Just with the vinegar, it would still be quite delicious. Let's jump across the middle one here to our charred kale. Give it a little bit of our garlic caper oil. Again, this oil's pretty infused, but I do want some of the bits of garlic and caper as well. All right. And then the last dish, which is here in the center, is actually kind of the impetus for this whole thing. I have some air fried cauliflower. You could easily just bake this 400, get some nice color on it. It'll take maybe about 35 minutes or so. And then I have these chickpeas. These are, actually I cooked these myself, but you could easily use canned. So for 1 head of cauliflower, I would say use just about a can, maybe most of the can of chickpeas. Now, the beauty of all of these dishes is that they should be served room temperature. And then I'm going to, this one in particular, make sure to get all of the capers and garlic on top. It's okay if there's little mounds of them, it's all good. And I do want to save a little bit of the oil to use to dip the bread in. Last thing, a little bit of fresh parsley. And I can hear the tomatoes, so let's go ahead and take those out of the oven as well. The tomatoes have been singing this whole time. They smell incredible, and I know they're done because they've reduced. There's a little bit of char, the garlic has been caramelized. So I'm gonna quickly chop up some fresh basil, and I'm gonna take all of my dishes over to the table and show you the setup. Here is my entire spread, again inspired by using pantry staples and fresh produce. The beauty of this meal, again, is that it's all supposed to be served room temperature. So you could make it earlier in the day, just have it in the fridge, take it out, let it come to room temp. So if you are planning on having people over, maybe celebrating with these kinds of food, it's just great to just, again, make ahead of time, put out, people can pick at it, they can mix and match, of course, this delicious charred bread. So once again, we have these incredible roasted tomatoes with garlic, fresh basil, and I did drizzle just a little bit more olive oil on there at the end just to give people a little bit more to sop up. Here I have the whatever you got pesto. This one is made with kale, miso, nutritional yeast, and walnuts. And then here, I wish I would have made more, but here's a little bit of our caper garlic oil, which is here on these grilled zucchini with, again, garlic caper oil. Charred kale with, again, garlic caper oil. And then this, which was sort of the impetus for all of this, which originally this was served over polenta, but we decided it was actually better the next day as a salad. So now it's a salad. So it's roasted cauliflower and chickpeas, drizzled in the caper garlic oil with some lemon served on the side. So I'm really excited to share this with more friends. We might have people come over today. It might just hang out in the fridge until others come over, but I'm really excited to share this. So thank you all so much for watching. I know I breezed through a lot of things like this and this, but the full printable recipes are gonna be on monsonmadethis.com. So definitely go there for the full printable recipes because I know you are going to want to make these. So thanks to all the channel members, my patrons. If you do want to become a channel member or a patron, the links for those are below. I will be doing a Monsonmadethis video eventually for all this stuff, but yeah, I'm just really excited to share these with some friends. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing and clicking the bell notification. And I will see you next time with a brand new recipe video. Bye.